we have a lot of engagements with customers on a daily basis. So over the last 18 months, a lot of information is filtered through in terms of what's really happening in the market, how are people adopting and thinking about IT delivery and cloud as an option. So there's some key points I just wanted to share with you. And there's going to be, I think, some alignment to what Chris was talking about in here. We didn't compare notes beforehand, so we'll just have a bit of a test to see how we did. But it's quite evident that the key word that comes up when we're talking to customers is pragmatic. Right? So when they're looking at IT deployment, they're looking at making pragmatic choices about what the best way to deploy that particular workload or application is. And that's based on many reasons, mainly because a lot of them have existing IT environments. And many of you probably here who are going back after this to go and manage one of those IT environments that you've had for a long time. They've got a lot of investment in infrastructure. You've got on-premise or hosted environment. And you'll be making choices about what's the best way to deploy a new app or where to put storage. And the analogy is very much the same to, we all maybe have homes with kitchens, and we'll choose to cook our own meal at times because it's quite appropriate, but we're not shy about going and getting a feed of takeaway fish and chips, or as a service, buy as you go when it suits us. And you can use that analogy through human nature all the way through. Taxis, have your own car, whether we use Wi-Fi or CDMA or whatever it is to connect to the internet, we're going to be pragmatic about our choices. And that's what we're really hearing from clients. There's a pragmatic way of thinking about IT. It's not cloud for cloud's sake. It's what's the best way to get the best business outcome at the best price and the best performance and the best reliability. The second too is just an hour reflection of the New Zealand market. And there's a lot of reading you can do about cloud. And the analyst community provide great information. In my role, I talk a lot to our peers. Just one secret is all the telcos talk to each other around the world. So we get a lot of insight as to what's happening in different regions. And one thing is really clear to us is that there are subtle regional differences in terms of adoption, what's available. And when you compare the US market, North America, for example, to Asia, there are distinct differences in terms of what customers are looking to buy and what's available to them. The same with the difference between Europe and, say, Australia and New Zealand. And what we've noticed, a really good example of this is that we had discussion. Chris talked about private cloud. And a lot of the information that comes out of the States, for example, is the large push toward private cloud. And private cloud is pretty well, if a dedicated version of that for an on-premise environment, is pretty much predicated on the fact that you need quite a lot of scale in order to achieve the economy around that. And if you have a large enterprise, a Fortune 500 company with 300,000 employees or 100,000 employees, and they've got 15 data centers that they've had for 20 years, they've got sunk investment, then it might make pragmatic sense to start to turn that into a virtualized or private cloud environment. But if you're a smaller company, even an enterprise in New Zealand, say maybe around about 5,000 to 8,000 employees as a large enterprise in New Zealand, you don't have the scale or the economies to go straight to a private cloud. You might have already outsourced or have a lot of your infrastructure hosted elsewhere. So we're seeing a bit of a greying of the waters, if you like. And I guess I'm just saying here is, great to read overseas information, but understand the local dynamics, understand what happens in the New Zealand marketplace. And hence, just understand the differences when you're reading through it. Another thought too is just in terms of how clients are looking to purchase services. And we have a large outsourcing business as well with many of our clients. And it's quite interesting as we started to offer the services and have these conversations throughout our Pathway to Cloud engagement, and we started getting to the decision point for clients about whether they take a service that they have had and looked after, like a little child on premises, and they're going to hand it over to you. It's quite an emotional experience for them in terms of, I've looked after this and cared for it, and now I'm going to hand it over to you, and you're going to look after it for me. And we have to recognise that there's business risk around that. They're looking for reliability, they're looking for the security requirements, and they're looking for the SLA and that care that goes with it. There's another part to this story too, is that many times it's not a baby they're handing over. It's actually, you could say it's a teenager they're handing over, because what they've had is they've had an investment in an application that has exceeded the lifespan of their business case. So originally it might have been a 5 to 10 year business case for the application, but 15 years on, they've now got this thing that's quite expensive to manage and quite difficult to control at times as well. And so they're quite relieved to pass that over and have someone else manage it and look after it. So it's the reality of working with customers. It's very much the focus is not so much on the technology, it's how then you manage it and transition it and work through the life cycle of that over time. So that's what we're finding with that. Just a really quick slide. This is the only slide that's got a couple of cloud pictures on it. Hopefully you won't see them too much of it. This is actually a picture from our cloud strategy document. And this just to share with you how we're communicating internally with our clients and how we view cloud. And the cloud word doesn't get used that much. It's about IT delivery or a continuum of IT delivery. We've basically got 6 types of offerings or services that we think about for clients. And it's not a definition type game, and it's not necessary to be really particular about what, but just to show the continuum that we expect clients to deploy workloads on-premise because it suits them to do that. It's maybe a financial application that they've had for some time, and it's very difficult and costly to move that off-premise into a hosting environment, so it's fine to stay where it is. They might be able to move some workloads and physical infrastructure and house it in our data center, one of our 13 data centers. And then we move into what we refer to a little bit as the grey area along the cloud spectrum, where they look at the shared public cloud, and there might well be some workloads and applications and services that are quite happy to move in there. And then they look at the dedicated the dedicated private cloud, and from just like the comments that Chris made, whether you need self-service or full activation, or whether you're just happy with some virtualized infrastructure that is maybe transferred in ownership to us, and then we'll manage it, provide the service levels, look after the life cycle of the equipment through, then that's quite appropriate. So we sort of refer to that as dedicated utility infrastructure that might move into full automated private cloud over time. And then we've got the shared private cloud, which was under the Ready Cloud banner of our services. And really the difference between these two is these are provided over a secure private network. It's actually, when we talk about some of the use cases, you'll see through the experiences how the conversation goes in talking about these and what's the most pragmatic way to deploy those different workloads. So, how are our clients using these services? And to be fair, we've been surprised at times, pleasantly surprised of how innovative some of our clients are being. We go back some time when we first put together the product descriptions and the service descriptions, and we thought, well, these are going to be the typical use cases. And test and development, for example, for infrastructure as a service seemed quite feasible. That's what clients will be using it for. We found out, though, that most of our clients don't use our infrastructure as a service for test and development. They use it for proof of concept and then quickly move it into production. And that's, again, one of the regional differences, I think, in that, first of all, they're quite familiar. New Zealand customers are quite familiar with hosting. It's not a new thing for them to be able to put a workload in someone else's environment and have that run, as long as they've got the reliability and the service levels around that. And the second thing is that, once again, it's a private network, not a public network that we're hosted over. So they have all those security and reliability things and redundancy parts are built in. So that's one thing we noticed. But also we've got customers who are software as a service providers who are using our infrastructure as a service to deliver their service in New Zealand. So, there's some things we've looked at and gone, well, that's quite clever. That's what we didn't intend it to use it for, but it's working out really well for them and really well for us. So I guess the message here is, we don't want to be quite focused and think this is the only use for it. We need to explore what's the best way to deploy whatever service in the best way.